This is Coach Jason Ballard, and I'm a business wingman. Over the years, I've learned a lot from working in our family construction business, serving as a senior officer in the United States Air Force, and running 12 different organizations around the world. Many people helped me get to where I am today, and it's my mission in life to serve as a personal wingman to others. That's what this podcast is all about, providing knowledge, tools, resources, and mentorship to help people soar to their highest altitude. Welcome back to the Soar podcast. This is your host, Coach Jason Ballard. It's a real honor to be with you today. We've got a really great topic teed up for you. Today, we're going to be talking about one of the number one things that can help leaders. Let's face it, it's hard. It is really hard in today's world to be a leader. There's so much weight on your shoulders. You have to be responsible for so many things. The other dynamic about being a leader is just the world we live in. It's just moving faster and faster and faster. And it's becoming more complicated. More things are becoming more interdependent upon each other. Our economies are interconnected, and it just creates pressure. It creates stress. It creates conditions where it's just more and more intense in the workplace. We're competing for workers more than we ever have in the past. We've got multi-generational folks in the workforce, from Gen Zs to millennials, all the way up to baby boomers, and having to deal with those dynamics of bringing all those different types of people together to work well as a team, as a united front of a team to achieve common goals and objectives. We also have the market demands. We have competition in the market for products and services. We have the demands of user and consumer experience and customer demands to get things faster, easier, cheaper. There's just a lot going on that creates a demand on leaders to think and operate in a lot of different ways, and it stretches us. It creates just a lot of stress. A lot of leaders I talk to today are stressed. They go home at night and it's hard for them to decompress. It's hard for them to reset from day to day. They go to bed thinking and stressing about things. They literally are losing sleep over the pressures, the expectations of today's leader. Is this happening to you? Do you feel what I'm putting down today? Because a lot of leaders are. How do you lead in this dynamic place? And so today we're going to give you some really good tips and tools to help you deal with the real issue at hand. Because the real issue at hand today, folks, is about problem solving, right? No matter how complicated things are, no matter how much pressure is put on you, no matter how many people you supervise, no matter how many things are going on in your personal life, your professional life, no matter what's going on, good or bad, today leaders are being forced to make faster, higher quality decisions. So the question is, how do you do that? How do you keep up? A lot of leaders today that I talk to, a lot of leaders that I'm engaged with, struggle to keep up with all of the things that are on their plate. And there's a variety of reasons for that. But today we're going to talk about problem solving. How do we problem solve? How do we eliminate the chaos? How do we filter in information, understand what's noise, what's real issues, what's not real issues, what's urgent, what's important, what do we need to get to today, what do we need to hold off on for tomorrow, and how to organize and just kind of filter through all of the things that come our direction. When I coach and mentor people in leadership, I say, growing up and learning to become a leader is like flying a Cessna. You go about 180 to 200 miles an hour in a Cessna. It's nice and steady. Cessnas can only go at a certain altitude, they only go a certain speed, and things are coming at you at that kind of pace. Well, when you become a leader, when you get into the director, VP, and C suite roles, the higher up you go, the more intense that becomes. It's like going from a Cessna to like an F-22 fighter jet. You're going at Mach 3. Things are flying at you left and right from all kinds of different directions. Could be an HR direction, IT problems, marketing challenges, sales issues. It could be anything from all directions. It's flying at you at Mach 3. And that's what it feels like. And you got to be able to maneuver quickly to be able to keep up and to be able to stay on top of things. But leaders also need to be able to stay calm, and they need to have a process for which they take in information, process that, process the information, categorize that, and come to some kind of resolution in a very timely manner without getting behind. And so, folks, that's what we're going to talk about today. So, my question to you: do you have a problem solving process that you use? How do you solve problems? Are you the kind of person that just reacts and just waits for people to knock on the door, or waits for an email to come in, waits for a dumpster fire to erupt, and you just react to that and respond in a way that's just in time kind of leadership decision making? Or do you have a process? A lot of people today are in react mode. Today we're going to talk about how to be proactive. So if you don't have a process for which you solve problems, I'm going to provide one to you today. This is a 5-step process for problem solving. It can be any kind of problem. It can be a personal problem. It can be a problem with an employee that's a troublemaker. It could be a challenge with an employee to groom them to the next level. It could be any kind of problem. So, the first question you need to ask yourself when dealing with various issues is, what kind of a problem am I dealing with? What kind of a problem am I dealing with? Step one in the problem solving process is defining the problem. Now, let me emphasize the importance of this: the root problem, not the symptom to the problem, because a lot of people are uncomfortable in the problem solving process. They're uncomfortable with a problem. Everybody wants to feel like everything's okay. Everybody wants to be, um, settled, everything to be comfortable, everything to be working well. And when problems come to you that challenge you and challenge your teams, it's kind of uncomfortable, and you want to race to a solution, race to something to get the hot potato off your plate, to make the feeling of pain go away. Don't do it. Your job as a leader is to do the right thing. So, step number one, define the root problem, not the symptom, not the easy way, not to throw cold water on a trash fire, but really truly, what is the problem? How do you know you've found the root problem? What is that process like for you? I'll give you an example. Many years ago, about 10 years ago, I was a leader in this organization, and we developed software. We had developed software for a particular customer, and it was unique to them. And we installed it. This is the very early on stages of working with this customer. This was a multi-million dollar deal. It was very important. Great customer. We got in there, we installed it, we got working, started working with them and implementing things and training them. And then we hit a glitch. So I never will forget it. Get a knock on the door. Jason, we need to talk. And this three of my leaders were in panic mode. They came to me, "Eh, Jason, we got an issue. The client's mad. We're all upset. There's a problem. There's an issue." And they were talking 100 miles per hour. I knew there was an issue. I knew it was important, but that's all I knew at that time. So, yes, come on in. Come on in the office. And we sat down and we started talking, and they were all over the map. They were very emotional, very passionate. They were just going through things in a very kind of erratic way, all over the map. And after about 10 minutes, I was really confused. And I asked them, I was like, all right, time out. I've got a question. What exactly are we trying to solve right now? And the room got quiet. And I could tell we just didn't have clarity on defining the root problem. So I stood up. I'm a big whiteboard guy. I have big whiteboards in all my offices and throughout my career. And so I went to the board and I erased a bunch of stuff on the board, and I grabbed an expo marker and I handed it to one of my leaders and I said, "So, I want you to define the problem. Write the problem statement on the board so I have an understanding of exactly what we're dealing with here." It was my way of cutting through the noise, cutting through the emotion, cutting through um, the passion and just all of the he said, she said, and really getting down to facts. And they fumbled and mumbled around. I said, "No, I'm still not clear on this being the problem. We need clarity. We can't solve a problem if we're not clear on what the problem is." And it took another probably 10 minutes for everybody to talk through that. And we finally got a problem statement written on the board. A particular part of the software was not working. It was a critical part of the software that scanned the environment from a cybersecurity standpoint. It scanned the environment of somebody's network, and it was bringing back the wrong answers, a lot of false positives. The system wasn't interpreting that data correctly and presenting that data back, and it made it look like there were bigger issues than there really was, and it scared the client. So now we've defined the problem. Well, how did that become the problem? We talked through that. Once we talked through that, we started getting some clarity, which leads me to categories of the problem. We're still in step one of defining the problem. But when you're defining the problem and you know what the problem is, then the question is, what kind of a problem do we have on our hands? And there's 8 different categories of problems. You can boil all the problems of your business, of your career, of your life. You can boil all problems down to 8 categories of problems. Number 1, first category of a problem is a people problem. You can have an insufficient number of people working. You don't have enough people on it. They may not have the right skill sets. They may not be communicating effectively. There may be misunderstandings. There may be they're not managing their time wisely. They're not listening to the team members enough, right? There's some kind of a breakdown, a personality conflict, or some kind of barrier between people. And somebody on the team doing something incorrectly, not knowing how to do something the right way. It's a people problem. You've got to fix an issue with the person. Okay? That's that's number 1. The second category is it's a money problem. Either you don't have enough money to solve the problem, to buy the parts, to buy the equipment. It's an unfunded thing. Even if it's funded, you may not have enough money. Maybe there's scope creep. Maybe the people managing the money aren't managing it appropriately, and there's a problem with the management of the money, but there's some kind of a money issue. You don't have enough money to deal with the needs. And you need to maybe look at prioritizing that money or managing it differently. All right. Number 3, the third category of a problem is a system related problem. Either the system's not working correctly, there's a software glitch in the system, there's a lack of understanding of how to use the system to the best of your ability. I find it interesting when I go into businesses, they have these really expensive CRMs, ERPs, these different systems to run their business. And almost all the time, they're only using like 20 to 30% of what the system's capable of. And they're doing all these workarounds in Excel, exporting it out of one system into another system and transporting it back into another. They're not using the systems correctly, or the system isn't functioning as it should. Some type of breakdown in the system and how it's supposed to be functioning. Number 4, process problem. This is a very, very common problem in the workforce today. There's either a process that exists, it's just not being followed. The process may exist, but not everybody knows about it and is trained on it and is doing what they're supposed to be doing the way they're supposed to be doing it. Or you just may lack a process altogether. And the lack of a process is causing you a problem. You just need to put a process in place for everybody to get on the same page. But here's another common thing with the processes is that sometimes process need to be standardized. You've got group A over here that has a process that's in conflict with group B over here who has a process, and they're not on the same page. And so maybe you have a higher level process issue that involves multiple people, and they're both following a process, but is still creating the problem. Number 5, you got an information problem. Either you're lacking data, the data is inaccurate, or the data is missing. You've got a lack of information. It's hard to make decisions. It's hard to identify problems. It's hard to work through these things if you don't have facts, if you don't have real good data to work from. And so, as they say, trash in equals trash out, right? Well, if the data you have access to is flawed or inaccurate, or there's some kind of an issue with it that's not allowing you to make really good decisions in solving problems and dealing with challenges, you got an issue. There's also misinterpretations of information where that creates confusion and misunderstandings. Person A over here, like your sales team, is going through what they know to be good information they're providing to their client, but yet the client is receiving that differently than the salesperson's intending that, and you're still not aligned. It's an information, almost a disinformation at that point, right? The information, not everybody is understanding the information in the way that they should in a unified manner, and that creates issues. All right, number 6. Number 6 category of a problem is training. This is really big too. A lot of times why there's a problem is because somebody doesn't have enough training, the right training, weren't trained the right way. They weren't trained on a specific aspect of things. Somehow, some way, there's an inadequacy in the training. And that creates a situation where they may not be as qualified or as confident in doing things you're asking them to do. And so they need to be refreshed. They need to fill those gaps in that training. They need to understand the whole aspect of whatever it is that there's an issue with, so they are adequately trained and able to execute flawlessly. The 7th category of a problem is equipment related. That can be computers, printers, vehicles, protective equipment. It could be, any kind of equipment. So either you don't have the right kind of assets, you don't have the right kind of equipment, or what you have may be broken, it may be deficient, not working properly, not utilized correctly. You got some kind of a malfunction with equipment. When I was in the military, we had chemical warfare equipment, gas masks, clothing, boots, gloves to protect us from chemical weapons. And in 2003, when I was a commander and was leading operations in our launch in Iraq, when we went to war with Iraq in 2003, Saddam Hussein launched Scud missiles in our general vicinity. Luckily, none of them hit, but that equipment was critical for saving our lives, keeping us safe, protecting us, giving us the confidence we need to fight through those types of scenarios. And so before we went to Iraq, we had found some old equipment that just wasn't working properly, and we tested it and we evaluated it, calibrated it, and then we swapped it out, got new equipment to make sure the equipment works correctly, especially when it comes to safety and security and all those types of things. Last but not least, the eighth and final category of how you categorize a problem is a resource problem. You don't possess the right tools, manuals, documentation, capabilities, etc. The resources may be outdated, they may not be serviceable, they may be overridden by new things, and you're dealing with old things. Like there's some issue with the resource, or they lack the resource, or the resource they have isn't good enough. So just to recap, the 8 categories of a problem are people, money, systems, processes, information, training, equipment, and resources. All problems can be broken down into one of those 8 categories. So when you're trying to solve a problem, when your team is trying to solve a problem, when your company is trying to solve a problem, the question in your mind is, okay, what is the problem? What's the root problem? How do we categorize that problem? How do we bucketize this? And so we know where to start dialing in on solving the problem. Because if not, sometimes people get in a chaotic mode of trying to do too many things too fast in the wrong order, and it compounds the problem from a small problem into even bigger problem. So this helps you laser focus in and troubleshoot the problem in a very logical, meaningful manner. Um, and it helps you get everybody on the same page on what that is. And it also helps train people around you, your peers, your coworkers, and your subordinates on how to think logically and reasonably about problem solving. This can't just be about you, the leader, solving problems. Like your team needs to learn this. You need to teach it to them as well. So that's step one of a 5-step problem solving process, is defining the root problem. And there's 8 categories for which you can group that and start dialing in on the problem to make sure you know what that problem is. Okay. Step 2 of the problem solving process is reviewing your options. Now that you know what the problem is, now you've categorized the problem, you know kind of where you need to start working on things. The question is, okay, what are our options in solving the problem? We can maybe do nothing and just keep going as is and accept that as a reality, accept the risks that come with it. We can do a 180 and go from plan A to plan B and switch gears and go a whole nother direction. You have a lot of options. Whether you realize it or not, every problem has options. This is where you need to explore the options. Be open minded. bring your team together and explore the art of the possible to solve the problem. And so back to my story, when my team was in my office and we had this issue with our client in the software that we had implemented for them, we knew the problem statement, but we need to brainstorm options. So I went and got another expo marker and I handed it to another leader in the room and I said, so let's start laying out options. What's option number one? And they started talking in circles and it was kind of chaotic. I'm like, no, 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 no. Write it on the board. Option one. And then we started writing down options. We can go back to the previous version of software before we had the issue. Okay, great. We can delete the software and fix the software and then reload it, re-implement it later. Okay, great. Another option. What's another option? Well, troubleshoot this particular part of the software that's glitching and see if we can triangulate on that, put a fix into place and just deal with that one thing. Okay, great. What's another option? And I just stair stepped them through 5 options. I always make people give me 5 options, regardless of how good or bad they may be. Put 5 options on the table. And then do the pros and cons on them. Okay, how much does this cost if we did this option? How much time is involved if we did this option? How much manpower does this take? What's the impact of the customer? What's the impact of our organization? What are we going to have to stop doing to do more of this to fix this problem? What's the trickle effect? What's the tertiary effects of this for each and every option? And at the end of the day, when you go through the pros and the cons and really map out the options and flush the details of those options out, it starts becoming clear which option is the better one. And so I always say, okay, out of the 5 options that we were looking at, which option really truly is the best that meets a timeline, meets a goal, meets an expectation, is reasonably priced that we don't break the bank. All these factors considered, which one really truly is the best option? And we get the group to come together on that and make a decision. Great. That leads us to step 3 of the problem solving process. So we've defined it, we've identified options. Now, step 3 is taking that top recommended option and making it the solution. Start going through the action steps necessary to troubleshoot, diagnose, get into the level of detail you need to actually start fixing the problem, putting the things in place to that will actually solve the problem and implement the solution, which leads me to step 4, implementing it. So step 3 is picking it. Step 4 is you're ready to pull the trigger and actually implement it. You've tested it. It's gone through an evaluation process. You feel highly confident. You're ready to go. And so step 4 is implement the solution and see how it goes. Step 5, validate the solution worked. Review the results. Did it fix the problem? Did it cause more problems? Are we seeing any other errors, any other issues, any other things going on that leads us to believe that we still have issues to solve? How confident are we that we solved 100% of the problem? What results need to happen for you to know you solved this problem and you're ready to move on to the next thing you need to be spending your time on? Folks, I'm telling you, this process works. And I'll go back to my example. After we reviewed the options of our software, it was very clear which solution we needed to fix. And so we went back and had our programmers fix that part of the software. What we didn't know is there were some things that was in the customer's environment, in their network, in their enterprise, their technology enterprise. There were things there that we didn't know was there. So we did not do a thorough enough job of assessing that environment before we implement. That was a big lesson learned. But there were some unknowns that we didn't account for. That once we implemented the software and we started executing the software in a certain way, and it started connecting to these unknowns that we didn't know were there, that's when the software started behaving differently because it didn't know what to do with the unknown entities in there, and it started presenting bad data. The unknowns will get you every time. And so we had our developers, fix those things, account for those things. We had to go back to the customer and get a lot of information on those things. And we went back and assessed the environment thoroughly to make sure there were no other gotchas, no other unknowns in the system. Then we went back and program. We're in step 3 of developing the solution to fix those things, how to deal with those things, process those things appropriately so we get the right answers, we get the right results from using the software. And we implemented it. We tested it thoroughly in an offline environment. We implemented it. It went well, and at the end of the day, a few days later, everybody was happy. Everything that was unknown became known. Everybody came together. It was a learning experience. It was actually a positive experience at the end of the day. The problem was solved, but more importantly, everybody involved learned more about the situation. They learned they got some really valuable lessons from it, and they learned to follow the process. The process allows you to solve the problem based on facts and data, and allows you to solve the problem more quickly, with less bias, with less noise, less chaos. It allows you to slice right through that and get to the root issue faster, which is the whole point. Giving you tools to help you deal with the multitude of crazy things that come your way every day, the multitude of decisions you have to make, the multitude of problems and challenges and noise and crazy things that happen in this wonderful world we live in, is to be able to slice through that. Use a process that works every time to help you make faster, better decisions. And folks, that's what it's all about. Helping you make faster, better decisions by simplifying the problem solving process. So I hope you're able to get a lot of value today. If you're interested in learning more, we can put some information out in the notes section. You can also contact me directly at soarhighercoaching.com. You can contact the folks in the contact section of the Soar Higher podcast. They can relay things to me as well. Many ways for you to learn more about this and get some free resources to help make life easier for you. And that's what I hope we were able to accomplish today. I appreciate you being here. It's always wonderful to spend time with you. I hope you get a lot of value from this, and we look forward to seeing you next time. Hope you have a great week, everybody.